I literally took my hand and I slapped myself as hard as I could to wake up because I was not going to be the guy that passed out on the way to space from 3Gs.
I'm Aislinn Green, and this is Travel Tales by Afar. This season, we're highlighting explorers of all stripes, and this week we're joined by someone who's taken exploration to extraordinary heights and depths. Jim Kitchen is a professor of entrepreneurship at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And in his spare time, he is an entrepreneur of a different type. He has visited all 193 countries, traveled into space aboard a Blue Origin flight, and descended 7 miles down to the ocean's Mariana Trench. But Jim's story isn't about checking off bucket list adventures. It's about how travel transformed him from someone focused on collecting experiences to someone committed to connecting with places, with people, and ultimately with himself. In our conversation, Jim shares the pivotal moment that shifted his approach to travel, what it's really like to rocket into space at 2,300 miles per hour, and how learning to listen to subtle nudges quite literally saved his life. Well, Jim, welcome to Travel Tales. It's so delightful to have you here today. And before we kick things off, could you tell me a little bit about what I'm seeing in your background? Because it is the most travel-y background I think I've ever seen.
Well, thanks for having me. So just for those of you that are listening, to describe my background, I have 35 years of stuff, of places that I've traveled. So this is a postcard from Dubrovnik. There's pictures up here of me as a much younger Jim on a trip that I went to with my dad to the pyramids, but probably hundreds and hundreds of pictures, just little reminders of places that I've traveled.
All right. I'd love to go back to the beginning because I want to understand how you became the traveler that you are today. When we first chatted, maybe a month or two ago, you mentioned that your parents were public school teachers who took cross-country trips every summer. So did those trips kind of lay the foundation for what we're seeing and hearing today?
Yes, my wanderlust is 100% genetic. It's in my DNA. It's who I am. It's what I am. And it's all passed down from mom and dad. Dad was a petroleum geologist, worked in Africa. He and my mom got married. They raised their family, my 4 brothers and sisters, in Africa.
Where in Africa?
In Libya, and they realized that Libya wasn't the place where they wanted to raise their family. So they moved back to South Florida, where dad had been during the war. And that's where I was born. And there's no petroleum geology work. There's not a lot of jobs down there. So dad and mom became teachers, and dad settled into teaching. And the best 3 things about teaching weren't the money, but it was June, July, and August. And so every summer, and when I say every summer, let's be clear, every summer, school would end and off we would go. They'd put the kids in the back of the wood-paneled station wagon. And as the youngest and with the least seniority, I had the way back.
Okay. Were you facing out the rear window?
Yes, you got it. You got it. And I have the dubious distinction of being one of the few people in the world that has seen the entire continental United States facing backwards. So we would go every summer from South Florida to Washington State. We'd spend the night in campgrounds, cheap motels. We would go see state parks. We would hunt for fossils. But the goal was dad was going to, collect as many specimens as he could because he would sell these things as a budding entrepreneur. He would sell citrine and amethyst and fossils and things like that. He had this little home shop. That really shaped who I was growing up in South Florida. We're lower middle class down there. Yeah. And, it's like, wow, there's so much excess and there's such an emphasis on collecting. And that was really my mentality. Go as fast as you can, collect as much stuff as possible. Go, 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 go. But travel always had a way of finding me. It brought them so much joy. It brought the kids, maybe we didn't appreciate it at the time, but we certainly appreciate it later. But it shaped who I was and what I wanted to do. And I didn't really know it at the time, but I went away to college. And then I had decided I was going to be in the CIA. That was going to be my job when I went to UNC Chapel Hill from South Florida.
Cool.
And then I took this one class, this entrepreneurship class. A venture capitalist was teaching it, and he inspired us to think of ideas. every week. And one of those ideas was a travel business. I knew travel pretty well. I had traveled somewhat extensively. And so it was logical for me to start a travel business. And this guy said, you really should do this idea. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you could always be a CIA agent, but you can't always do this. And so I took his advice and I started a travel business specializing in group tours to the Caribbean, got these incredibly insane deals like 17 days in Australia, New Zealand. Come and check out our hotels, come and check out our beautiful country. And I would take people up on that. And so I traveled to all of these places. I'd started this travel business and had this incredible
How old
career
were
going.
you when
I was
you
in my
started
early
this?
I was in college, right? So
I
travel
know.
found me in college. It was in my DNA, right? It was what I wanted to do. And I also had started was the East Coast wing of a space travel company. I'm showing a brochure called Project Space Voyage. This was 1987.
Wow.
They were low Earth orbit trips. And this was a company called Space Expeditions. Visionary traveler TJ Schwartz had started it. And so I flew out to see him, and I was going to be his East Coast representative for Project Space Voyage. So I was like wanting to sell travel and space. And so I had, I had this early interest in that as well. And then I sold that company, scaled it and sold it. And I'm at this crossroads in my life where I don't really know what I'm going to do. That was the beginning, the transition from this collection phase
Yeah,
to connecting.
I see. So before you were like, I want to go and see as many places as possible. I want to kind of like a little bit of box checking, maybe.
Yeah.
And then what was it about that moment? Like, why was that so transformative for you?
So I had this huge existential crisis in my life. I was married. I had young children. I had all that I ever wanted for my life, but I just wasn't a fully functional human being. I mean, I looked the part. I had all of the degrees that made me successful. This beautiful family. I had an amazing house, all of these things, but I was like, there's something missing, right? There's something missing to all of this. I began traveling. And listen, let me not delude any of you thinking that I had this wily plan that I was going to figure out my life. And then I was like, you know what? Travel has served me well.
Hmm.
Let's go with it. And I started learning who I was, what I stood for, what was important.
So how did you travel from that point on that allowed you to do that? What shifted in terms of how you approach the world?
Great question. So I had traveled to roughly half of the world's countries, and there's 193 countries, and let's just say I had 100 left to go. So I had this list of places yet traveled, but I went there with the intention of not going. There's some people, and good for them. There was one person that went to like 20 countries in one
Yeah.
day in Europe, right?
Yeah,
Fast as
totally.
they could. And then there's a Guinness World Record of somebody that went to all 193 countries in like 1 year. And it's like, God bless them. That's amazing. That's exactly the opposite of what I was trying to do. My goal again was not to collect, it was to connect. So, an example, I think where the light started shining for me was I'm in Afghanistan, about as far away from Chapel Hill, North Carolina as one could get. And I'm in this busy market. People are yelling, screaming at each other in a language that I don't understand. And there are cattle walking through the streets and strange smells and strange food and strange people and just wearing strange clothes. And they're literally like, there's two guys to my right, maybe a couple meters away from me, 6 feet or so away from me, and they're just screaming at each other. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And my guide is laughing. And I see that they're actually kind of laughing and screaming. And I'm like, oh, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this one way, but I should have been seeing it at another. And I learned these crazy good lessons of one is that that was my transition from collecting to connecting and how important that was, and not underestimating that connection, to understand and feel what they're feeling, to learn as much as I could from them. The second was find things that you're so passionate about. So first, connecting. Second is to find meaningful things to do. And for me, that was my transition into teaching, which is what my parents were,
Yeah.
Ironically.
Full circle.
And the last one was, and this is the most difficult, is to learn to love yourself. So while you're connecting and learning to love other people, give yourself a break. And for me, what that meant was, what do I stand for? What are my values? What am I living by? What are the rules? What are my boundaries? What are the things that I will not live my life without? And so I had this context now for, moving forward. And then, I got to travel to a bunch of other places, and I just found myself. I found myself through travel, and there it was again.
That's really lovely. Well, so we're going to take a pretty big leap here, literally and metaphorically. So the reason that I reached out to you was because you on, March 31st, 2022, you were on a Blue Origin flight. So I want to hear all about that. But first, how did you, it sounds like space was also an interest of yours as a child. You mentioned the business that you started when you were young. So how did you arrive at that moment on March 31st where you're about to shoot 66 miles into the air, into space?
Yeah. When I was a child, my parents, one of the things that we did, they were huge space buffs. We would go out and watch the space launches on the beach. We were about 3 or 4 hours south of Cape Canaveral, and we could see the big launches from the coast. I remember sitting in my mom's lap and just watching those things and being, wow. And, at that time, our heroes were space heroes. And so we wanted to be like Gus Grissom or Alan Shepard. And for me, like doing that was really cool. But that was a lot like saying, hey, I also want to be a baseball player, right?
Yeah.
In general, the astronauts were in the Air Force, et cetera, right? They were fighter pilots, and these were the elite few.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to be an astronaut, but that dream never faded. And fast forward, I started this company, and I was selling low Earth orbit space trips. So I was keeping this dream alive. Met my wife, and actually had the foresight when just before we got married, I asked for a prenup. And for all of the women that are going, what? No, had nothing to do with money, had nothing to do with anything related to money, but it did have to do with going to space. And I did say to her, and as importantly, she remembers me saying to her that if I ever get a chance to go to space, I want to do it. She's like, yeah, as if. Okay. And so
I love this marriage clause.
I'm doing this, right? I'm doing this. I'm going to hold something up here. This is the Chicago Daily Tribune, and it says space flight story. Okay. This is May 6th, 1961. And this is a picture of Alan Shepard. I wanted to do what Alan Shepard did. I didn't want to fly to space in a plane. I wanted to get in a rocket if I was going to do this and do what he did. And so I reached out to Blue Origin and followed them, actually invited myself to one of their launches. They were like, what do you mean you're here? And I was like, yeah, I'm here to watch. And they're like, come on over, made friends with them. And then was on the 4th human launch in 2022.
Wow. I hear that you replaced Pete Davidson. Is this correct?
That is not correct. Pete Davidson was replaced, but yes, he was replaced because he kind of chickened out a couple of weeks before the breaking news. Yeah, he just decided, I think he got scared. That's just I think, and I could see that.
It seems scary. Were you scared?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. When you decide that you're going to do that, there's stages of space travel. The first one is like, I'm excited. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Because I got a call that said, guess what? If you want, you can be on the 4th launch. And the 4th launch was early, right?
That's early.
This was 3 years ago.
What was your immediate thought, though, when you got that call? The very first thing that came to your mind?
You know those pictures of like Tiger Woods or I don't know, a famous tennis player winning like Wimbledon or like the US Open, and they're like the masters and they're like, all down on their knees. And they're like, yes, finally I won my first, like, oh my gosh, that's the reality that, it's that excitement phase, but that leads into denial. Like, it can't be.
Yeah.
And then there's this acceptance phase of like, okay, this is happening. And then this is the most strange, the abject horror phase. This is like the terror phase. And this can last until like 3 or 4 days before launch, before you go back to the calm acceptance phase of this is happening. And then, 10, 9, 8, thinking of my family and friends. 7, 6, I'm a professor, love what I do. 5, like I'm fine with this. Like I am who I am. I've learned so much from travel and life, and I've said my goodbyes to everyone. 4, 3, 2, I'm at peace. I'm whole. If anything happens, I'm okay. 1, oh my gosh, this is getting ready to happen. You're like, oh my gosh. And then the thing takes off and you're like, wow, that's insane. And we're talking 2,300 miles an hour within just a minute or two. And you're like, oh my gosh, holding on. But it was an extraordinary experience, one that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. And I still pinch myself daily as just to remind myself, and can never get that out of my brain.
It's interesting that you had this moment of acceptance that I often associate with people who are maybe facing the end of their life. That seems like a very profound moment to have when you get to continue your life. So I want to hear more about what followed all of that. But first, going back, what did your wife say when you brought up this space flight, that it was actually happening, that the prenup was coming due? And then B, what was the training like?
She was like, are you really, like, seriously? Like, this is really happening? It was such an honor, though. Like, I'm a school teacher. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship at UNC, right? So I'm back in this humble, beautiful phase as a professor, like a teacher, right?
Yeah.
I got a couple hundred students at the business school, Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC, and just enjoying life. And then all of a sudden I find out I'm going. And I tell her that, and she's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, that's so amazing. That's it. And I just feel so blessed. I feel like, wow, I have this balance in my life, and like everything is going so well because I'm so connected. I'm in such flow, but not by luck or happenstance, right? Through work, like being methodical about that. There's some strategy here I hope you guys are seeing. And the training part of that really did take me out of that terror phase and back into that acceptance and excitement phase of, it's okay. This is fine. It's okay. But the training was amazing. It was 3 days of what to do, what not to do.
Did they like expose you to G4? Like, was your body actually being
I
trained
did that outside of Blue Origin in a centrifuge up in at NASTAR in Pennsylvania, and learned about, how to breathe properly, which really came in handy. So I felt fully equipped to go, both through the work that I had done, sort of mentally and physically, and what Blue Origin, how they trained me. So that was, it was a piece of cake.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it was a piece of cake. So what was that like? What did it feel like? And then what did it feel like once you were actually in orbit? Walk me through that experience.
Yeah. So 1-0 liftoff, and you're like, wow. This is happening, and you see flames out your window. So everyone has a 4-foot window.
Okay.
and you see these flames, and you're like, fire. It's like,
Yeah,
wow.
that's not
But you're kind of equipped for that. Like, this is coming.
okay.
And
Yeah.
then it takes off slowly, and then it tilts and turns slightly. So now I'm going, sort of sideways up. And every second or two, it's like 100 miles an hour. So we get to what's called max Q, which is really the most dangerous part of the launch.
Hmm.
And it's the maximum dynamic pressure on the
I
vehicle.
see. Like that's when things could kind of
That's
explode
that's the
essentially.
time. There's two.
Yeah.
There's two of
Okay.
those. There's that one. There's max Q, and then there's the separation, because if the capsule doesn't separate from the rocket booster, then the whole thing falls down in one piece, right? So there's no parachutes, can't solve that, et cetera. So when you get separation, that means you are in space. You will be getting out of your seat, and you can do whatever you want for the next 4 minutes. But on the way up, so it's 2,300 miles an hour, and I get to max Q, and I'm feeling the G's.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to feel the G's because they're only like
Okay.
3 G's. I had done 6.2 G's. I'm fine. But at this point, my vestibular system's off a little because I'm in seat 3, and I've talked to some other seat 3 people. And seat 3, for some reason, I don't know, it's just something. And my vestibular system was a little bit off. And I'm like, I'm feeling a little effects of these G's. So I literally took my hand and I'm like, I slapped myself as hard as I could. Wake up, because I'm not going to be that guy that goes to space after 40 or 50 years of wanting, to do this.
Totally.
Dream of being an astronaut, selling space trips, prenup, Mrs. Glenn, daggett. I was not going to be the guy that passed out on the way to space from 3Gs, right? So I woke myself up like, come on, man, you got this. And, but then the capsule separates, and you're like, you look out your window, and it's silence, complete silence. And everyone is looking at that. And you can't help but see it. It's the earth. It's half of the earth. And then the blackness of the universe. And this little wisp of the atmosphere. And while the earth was really cool, it was just that blackness that was just mind blowing. It was like, that is infinity. And wait, that's the earth. That's the earth. Are you kidding me? Like there's been 108 billion people that have walked on this planet, and all of them in one form or another, in one language or another, whether they spoke it or just thought it, said, I wonder what it's like up there, and to be able to see where we are from there. And only 700 people have been able to see that. So the gratitude, the tears.
Did you cry? I was
The
going to ask if you
tears
cry.
that,
Yeah.
like, the first thing I did, I'm a spirit, and just, I'm not pushing this on anybody, but I'm a spiritual person. Like, this just comes, this is part of me. And I said a little prayer. I mean, you got 4 minutes, and I just said, had a brief moment of connection there. And the tears, to be able to see that in this precious place that we live, that little wisp of the atmosphere that separates us from calamity, like that little atmosphere, like, does a lot, right? It does a lot. It serves a huge purpose. It's insane how important that thing is. And just the beauty of seeing out hundreds, if not thousands of miles. I had spent my entire life traveling in and out of borders. And I looked out, and it's just one big place. All I could see was the ocean and the mountains and, lakes and rivers, and far off, there were no borders or boundaries at all. And I couldn't help but think, if that was what everyone could see, it would shape a lot of the way that we see the world today. It would shape a lot of opinions on the things that we think today. And that, I think, would shift a lot of the behavior that we see in ourselves and that we think towards others. And we might think a little bit more holistically.
Well, I feel like there are two things behind you that are tied to this flight. And I'm curious to know if I'm right. There's what I believe is your spacesuit, and then there's the 194 flag. Could you tell me a little bit about both of those items?
Yeah, that's my spacesuit. I'm gonna go get something.
Do you ever wear it?
No. That would be way too awful. Way too cheesy. Yeah. Yeah. Spacesuit was cool. These are socks that I wore. Big socks.
Yeah,
And
really big socks.
They're like uncomfortably large, like
up
gym
to your
socks.
knee.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for this.
Okay.
So for those of you that are listening on a podcast, these are socks that literally might go above your knee, right? Like they're huge, huge socks. And the reason is we were limited to 3 pounds. The only thing that we could bring with us had to go in this little bag. This is maybe a 1.5 foot long bag by maybe 7 or 8 inches. So everything that you brought had to go in here.
Okay.
So I brought some jewelry. I brought some stickers. This sticker went to space. So I brought some of these.
Amazing.
And then I brought some stickers that said, my professor went to space, and all I got was this lousy sticker. So if anybody wants one of those, I have some extra. But I had some cool things.
Okay. Wow.
So you want to guess why I wore those socks?
To keep you warm?
Nope. So I could pack way more stickers and way more stuff in my socks. Gosh, I hope anybody from Blue Origin doesn't hear this. But I had probably 10 pounds of stickers and other things, so I could give them to my students. Yeah, in my socks. So I was a mule. I was a sticker mule on display.
Yeah. Unexpected confessions from Jim Kitchen.
But the spacesuit was great. The 194 flag was after traveling. So I finished my trip around the world, sadly, in 2019. My last country was Syria. A bittersweet moment, but amazing nonetheless. And so that was 193. There was 193 countries in the world recognized by the UN. There are other countries that aren't part of the UN, but that are generally like Bermuda is part of the UK. And so that's not a UN country because the UK is. 194 was the represented to me the next big leap that I took. And it was really so meaningful being able to do that, be able to show that, particularly my students and my children, that anything is possible, to never stop believing, keep those dreams alive.
Yeah.
Right. That 194 was really important. It was a manifestation. That 194 equals that. And so I came out of when I landed, I pulled that out, and that was my 194 flag, and it was awesome, and to accomplish a lifelong dream like that is spectacular.
Absolutely. And from there, you took a very different path. You dove deep, quite literally. So just months after touching space, you descended 7 miles down to the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. So why did you do that, and why so soon? Were you just looking for the next great adventure?
Yeah, to be able to go from the highest place from 67 miles down to 7 miles below. Again, it was just this sort of convergence of time and events. So it lined up that this trip would be offered just after I went to space. And so I said yes. Didn't really know a lot about it, but I learned in a hurry what a real submarine was. Victor Vescovo is the visionary behind this titanium submersible that was created and tested and licensed. And he had this professional organization of scientists, and he was mapping the world's oceans. And he would be at the Mariana Trench in July of 2022. And I said yes. So I learned a lot about this submersible versus the other one that has been in the news recently. And just an amazing organization, professional, Standards were very high. Safety standards were very high. And some of the things that people should know about this is that submersibles are very safe, right? They're small. This submersible sat 2 people. It was very thick titanium, maybe like 3 or 4 inches of spherical titanium. Had been tested extensively at the Mariana Trench. It had been down there before. And then there's this syntactic foam all around it. So it looks, when you see these pictures of these submersibles, like maybe 15 feet long and maybe 8 feet wide. But the sphere is actually very small, and it has enough room for 2 people. So if you're claustrophobic, you would hate this, right? And this would be a no for you. So I sat next to a pilot, literally to my left, and Tim McDonald, and he and I went down. It took about 4 hours from the top of the ocean down all the way to the bottom to 7 miles below. It takes that long.
And then did you stay down below?
You're down there for about 3 hours, and then there's 4 hours on the way back up.
Wow. So what did you see down there, or not see, I guess?
So good. It's so good. There's some similarities between space and the bottom of the ocean, but what's so cool about this is that when you get down to the bottom, you turn the LED lights on, and you're at a place, hear me when I say this, you're at a place where we're in the eastern pool of the Mariana Trench, in a place where no one has ever been to before. No one, no human has ever seen this. And all of a sudden, Tim turns the LED lights on, flashes. There it is, right there. And then there's stuff down there. You see it.
Like what?
There are things that are there.
I'm picturing creatures that are unnameable.
Megalodon is there.
Exactly.
No, I'll show you. I knew we were talking today. So there's this thing called an amphipod, and I'll show you. This is it.
Oh, wow. It looks like a little shrimp.
It's this little shrimp. And so you can kind of see there's a shell.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
And this amphipod is pretty big. There's ones that are like a foot long that are down there. Okay. So here's the situation.
Foot long shrimp. Whew.
Foot long shrimp, foot long amphipod. Here's the thing. That thing is all shell, very little body, but a huge exoskeleton, because there's no oxygen. Okay. You are 7 miles down, no oxygen, no sunlight, freezing temperatures, right? Like it's 32 degrees, but it would be colder, but it just can't, it can't freeze. Yeah. So it's right. Yeah. So it's 30 something degrees. It's freezing down there, and crushing pressure. 16,000 pounds per square inch. That means like an African elephant would be sitting on top of like my fingernail. And yet amphipods live down there. And what the real story is, these things called holotherium, which are these little like oozy little transparent creatures. And then these things called bacterial mat. So it's this gold looking bacteria that lives in between rocks in the water, and it thrives down there. And you're like, wait, how does this live? This thing swims around. We caught them. Like I have a jar of these things, and it lives.
How did you catch them? You have little external scoopers?
We had some things down there that caught these little bait traps that caught them, and it's crazy. And so despite all of those conditions, life exists. And what's fascinating about the Mariana Trench, seeing the bottom of that, is despite all of that, like completely inhospitable to life, things thrive down there. And you're like, wow, that is maybe what's on some of these other like Jupiter's moons, or, places that we think life is inhospitable, like nothing could ever live there, but yet it does. So that was a good year, being able to see that
That's
stuff.
a good year.
The top to the bottom, 67 miles plus 7, the 74-mile difference between the two is just extraordinary.
Did you feel that it was an equally spiritual experience down in the trench, like going down there? Did you have that same sense of kind of awe or wonder, or was it different?
It was different. Definitely looking at the earth from space has that spiritual component of, oh my gosh, but this appreciation for life being so persistent and so amazing. This beautiful planet on which we live is so spectacular. And I'm just in awe of it. And it's funny. It's so beautiful. Like the other day, I was high fiving, I was walking down this path and I was high fiving plants. And this girl was like, what are you doing? I'm like, they're plants. Like, I don't know. I'm just high fiving. I'm like, this is fun. This is a beautiful planet on which we live. We have beautiful people. You and I are talking. Like, I'm enjoying this conversation. I love talking about travel and this transformative experiences. And we just live in such a cool place. We just need to find the goodness in all of us. And it's just such a joy to be living this short little time that we get on this planet.
I love this idea of focusing on gratitude. So, with that in mind, let's close with this idea of travel nudges, because you mentioned that you had the opportunity to take a ride on the Titan submersible, but you are hypervigilant now about something you call nudges, and you listened to something inside of yourself and you backed out, and the submersible later imploded. I mean, it was such a tragedy, and I can't imagine what it was like to be so close to having potentially lost your life. So what do you mean when you say nudge? What happened around the Titan submersible? And what's your advice for people who want to try to tap into the side of themselves?
All right, here's the story. I've lived this life where I've done a lot of work to get to where I am now or where I was. And I realized that when I was traveling in Colombia, for example, I'm in the backseat of a car and I see these migrants picking carrots. And I'm like, if I don't act on that little nudge, it's going to go by. Stop the car. Stop the car. Stop the car. I don't know why. Stop the car. Get out. And I start picking carrots. Can I pick with you? And I spend like 3 or 4 hours with these guys, and I get to know their story of where they came from, what they're doing, what jobs are available, how they're moving around the country. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad that I acted on that nudge. And I kept doing it over and over again. And you have to differentiate like what the difference is between a nudge and like the chili you ate last night. Right. Right. So it's like, okay, one is real. The other is heartburn. Right. So,
Yeah, totally. What does it feel like for you, a nudge?
For me, it's tapping into that spiritual side where I'm almost kind of living my life with somebody in my brain, like they're slightly ahead of me and they're saying, don't miss this. And it can be this transformative experience. And we'll talk about the Titanic here in a minute. Or it can be something as small as like, hey, you see that hydrocortisone? You're planning your travel bag. You should probably bring that. And you're like, and then 2 days later, you're like, golly, I got bit by something. And you're like, I tried to tell you, you should have brought that. Now that's a terrible explanation, but I think you kind of get the point.
Yeah.
And it's so I've begun following these nudges. And so my things like hydrocortisone, man, I just embrace it. And when I hear it and feel it and sense it, tie into it. And just so I would just say to the viewers and listeners, start listening for it. I think everyone can tap into it. And here's the thing. When you've done some work on you and figured out who you are and what you stand for, the voices that get in the way of those nudges, suddenly there's a lot less volume. Like the self-criticism of, we talked about, loving yourself. When you've done the work, you're suddenly not hearing, hey, you're so dumb. That was the stupidest thing you ever said, right? You're hearing just silence, like, hey, I'm good. And so now you can begin to listen to those nudges and hear them. So often the radio's too loud or our voices in our head are too loud, and we drown them out with our own negative self-talk. And so I think it's quieting those things and being listening to and being mindful of those nudges. And they've served me. And here's how they served the Titanic. So I had signed up to go. And I am in Canada the week before the disaster. And I'm at the hotel. And I hadn't been paying attention to any of the travel plans, et cetera. I didn't remember where I should fly into, but I just show up at the hotel and I see out my window, there's this icebreaker called the Polar Prince. And it's right in my view. And I'm like, golly, what is that thing? I feel sorry for anybody that has to ride on that thing. And I go down and I go to the passenger meeting and I'm like, where's our ship that, we're going out to the North Atlantic on? And then we're going from there to the Titanic in a submarine. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the Polar Prince. And I'm like, that's the Polar Prince? I mean, the seas are 25 feet. That thing is a flat bottom icebreaker. How in the world? Now, mind you, there's forest fires, there's fog, and, everyone's like, hey, shush you. Like, we're getting ready to go to dive the Titanic. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? The seas are 25 feet. Have you ever been on an icebreaker? Like this doesn't have any horizontal and vertical stabilizers. I mean, are you kidding me? And I asked the question.
Yeah.
Raised my hand, asked the question. No one liked me in this meeting, especially the company. And I said, how many times have we been to Titanic depths? In the 7 weeks, the 3 weeks of training, and then the 4 weeks of passengers prior, how many times has the Titan been to Titanic depths? And they said, none. I was like, okay. And I made the motion to the guy that was leading the meeting. I said, talk to you after. We'll talk to you after. So everyone went away and they got their stuff and they went on the Polar Prince, and I told the guy aside, I just don't have a good feeling about this. I had been on a titanium submersible with a professional team and could juxtapose the different operations. And I just listened and I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I told him, I'm not going. I said, the reason why I didn't want to spook everyone else, but I'm not going. I don't feel good. So I had spent an extraordinary amount of money. I'm walking away from an extraordinary amount of money. Called my wife and said, I'm coming home. And the next dive that Titan took was its last. And I knew Hamish Harding. He was a Blue Origin guy. I feel terrible for the billionaire's son who didn't really want to go. But the company had sold him this thing. There's so many stories about the company, and there's been documentaries about them, and I've tried to stay out of all of that. But my nudge served me well, saying, no, it's not right. They're not right. The whole situation's not right. That's a no. It's not worth your life. And a few days later, my friend Hamish and those people died. And it was very hard to get over the survivor's guilt of that. But I think that the message is just to listen, listen more, be more in tune, do that work, find out who you are, what you love, connect deeply with people, and then listen for those nudges.
And it sounds like your experiences of over the years kind of prioritizing, like in this moment, you prioritize listening to yourself over, let's just face it, like economics.
Some things are more important. And I'm a big fan of listening, but you've got to do the work so that you don't get in the way.
Well, beautiful note to end on. When does your book come out? Where you share all of this
I'll keep
wisdom.
You posted. It'll be sometime next year. It's part travelogue, but most part lessons learned while traveling the world from a guy that was just like all of you. All lessons that we can learn to be a better form of ourselves, and written from a humble perspective where we're all just trying to figure this whole thing out. The big lesson is to pack lightly. Let's keep it light and keep it fun, and don't take ourselves and our situations so seriously, and just let yourself breathe a little bit more. And
don't forget to stuff your socks with stickers.
That too. that could be a working. I think that's the new working title for the book. Stuff your socks with stickers. I love that.
And that's Jim Kitchen, traveler, professor, author, sticker mule. In the show notes, we've linked to his social media handles and his websites. Jim's story really does remind me that the most profound journeys aren't always about how far we go, but how deeply we're willing to connect, whether that's with a stranger in an Afghan marketplace with the infinite blackness of space, or with that quiet voice inside of us that knows when something isn't right. Something to ponder while we prepare next week's episode for you. We'll see you then. Ready for more travel tales? Visit afar.com/podcast and be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We're at Afar Media. If you enjoyed today's exploration, I hope you'll come back for more great stories. Subscribing makes this very easy. You can find Travel Tales by Afar on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. The podcast is also part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network, so visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like Culture Kids and the Explorers Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review the show. It helps us book amazing guests like the one you just heard, and it helps other travelers find it. This has been Travel Tales, a production of Afar Media. The podcast is produced by Aislinn Green and Nikki Galteland. Music composed and produced by Strike Audio. And remember, everyone has a travel tale. What's yours?